way for the MTA's congestion pricing plan, which could go into effect as soon as next spring. Cars driving into Manhattan below 60th Street could pay as much as $23 a day in tolls. However, the FDR and the West Side Highway would remain free. Everyone is weighing in on the controversial plan.
That's pretty steep. I'm not a fan. I'm absolutely not a fan.
The air is going to be cleaner. It means that there's going to be less traffic, and it means that there's going to be funding to invest in subways, buses, Metro North, Long Island Railroad.
Where we live here on 2nd Avenue, there will undoubtedly be more traffic and more cars here being pushed back up as people try to use the FDR drive for free.
So the MTA will now have to determine how exactly to implement congestion pricing and if any exemptions will be made, especially for New Jersey drivers. This morning, joining us right now is New Jersey Congressman Josh Gottheimer, is prepared to take legal action to prevent congestion pricing from happening. So, Congressman, good to see you once again on this topic. We've been talking about this for, I feel like years.
Years.
Right?
True,
and so when you say legal action, let's begin there, right? What exactly does legal action look like? What does it mean?
Well, the governor had announced recently that the state will be taking legal action, and we'll see exactly what their plans are in terms of their strategy. But what's very clear, and we've obviously also, as we've talked about, taken bipartisan action in Washington against the MTA, because all this is, and the governor has admitted this, is a cash grab for the MTA, which is woefully mismanaged, and they need the money, right? The MTA has admitted in their reports to the federal government that this actually won't help the environment. In fact, it'll lead to the release of more toxic chemicals because you'll have a new buildup of traffic outside the GW Bridge in the outer boroughs, more trucks, and more cars are going to be building up outside the Lincoln and the Holland. Yeah. And so they actually say there'll be more chemicals like formaldehyde, which are cancer-causing chemicals, pluming into the air in these areas. You may have less traffic south of 60th Street, but a ton of new traffic north of 60th by the bridge and the tunnel in the outer boroughs. So the lawsuit will be based on the new impact this will have on the environment. And of course, this idea that you're going to suddenly charge folks $23 a day on top of the $17 they pay already in this congestion tax.
So do you think the Federal Highway Administration ignored all that environmental impact that you're talking about?
I mean, this is like the ultimate head scratcher, right? We're all trying to understand. If the MTA admitted that this is going to have a negative impact, not just on traffic, but on the environment, on more pollution, why did the Department of Transportation just rubber stamp? And instead of saying to them, which is totally the normal process, we'd like a deeper study of your findings, right? You've said there's going to be more pollution. Well, can you look more into this and come back to us? Instead, they just ignored it and said, yeah, go on through. I mean, I think part of the lawsuit will obviously focus on that and trying to understand what exactly happened here. How could they ignore the MTA's own facts and admissions? Okay, so that's the environmental component to it, right? And then there's the actual fact that it's going to hurt people's wallets if it actually goes through, right? So $23 is the high end of it, right? There's still discussions of exemptions and so on and so forth and what exactly that looks like. Would you, Congressman, support the plan overall if New Jersey drivers were exempt by driving over the GWB Lincoln Holland tunnels? Sure. Listen, if commuters from Jersey don't pay a nickel more than they pay now, which, by the way, is not cheap, right? $17 a day to go over the bridge or through the tunnels, right? Very expensive for hardworking nurses and electricians. People work, restaurant workers are incredibly hard workers. And then if you said, listen, you're exempt from this $5,000 a year new tax, the $23 a day, sure. I mean, that's all I want to make sure is that people don't have to pay more money because it's an outrageous sum of money for people who are struggling. And so, listen, my feeling is this. If John O'Lieber and the MTA want to back down and actually do the right thing here, great. But right now, they've just been fast forwarding to sticking it to hardworking Jersey drivers. Sorry to interrupt you here. New Yorkers too. Let me ask you this, because there's been a lot of squabbling, rightfully so, on both ends. We need this to keep the MTA going. You're saying it's going to hurt people. Both valid points, right? Have you guys actually had a conversation about what exemptions would look like? We've certainly let it be known. I wrote to John O'Lieber actually just a few days ago because he talked about exemptions for New Jersey and exemptions for Jersey drivers. And I said, listen, that's great. If you're going to exempt Jersey drivers, I'd be very pleased about that. I'll even buy him a beer if he exempts Jersey drivers. We're reasonable here. What's unreasonable is blowing up a 100-plus-year cooperative relationship with the Port Authority. We've been working together with the Port Authority, with the bridges and the tunnels and the airports and the ports for more than 100 years. Why suddenly, out of nowhere, you stick it and say, we're not even going to give a nickel to Jersey? By the way, just to put a fine point on this, do you know that the MTA put aside $100 million for the Bronx for their pollution effects from congestion tax, including $25 million for an asthma center for children, leaves out Jersey altogether. Yeah. They admit it's bad for the environment, right? They admit it, but they're doing nothing for Jersey except sticking us a bill to help pay for their mismanagement.
What would that middle ground, that kumbaya connection be for this to go through? Where I don't know. I know not everyone's going to be happy no matter what happens, but what would that look like?
To me, kumbaya means the MTA can keep getting their federal support in exchange for, because they get $2 billion a year, despite losing hundreds of millions of dollars a year to fare skippers and mismanagement. We'll give them that in exchange for not a nickel of new impact on Jersey drivers, right? They want to do what they want to do with other drivers from other states, have at it. But when it comes to Jersey drivers, as long as the drivers here aren't affected 1 cent, 1 penny, I'm fine with it.
All right. To be continued, right? Because it's almost.
We're only halfway through this fight.
It's not over.
You'll have to see more. You're going to have to see more of me. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. That's okay. What kind of beer would you buy? I'm just kidding. All right, Congressman. Good to talk to you. We'll talk to you soon, I'm sure.